Yang Berbahagia, Datuk Jana Santiran, Deputy Secretary General, Environment, Ministry of Environment and Water, KASA, Datuk Lim Kok Boon, President of Malaysian Plastics Manufacturers Association, MPMA, Mr. Eddie Fong, Chairman of MPMA PLASTECH MONTH 2021 and Secretary General of MPMA, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 7th webinar in the MPMA PLASTECH Month 2021 webinar series entitled Circular Economy and Climate Change, the New Business Model for Plastics Converters. To begin the webinar today, let me run through the etiquette or rules of the webinar. You would notice that we have muted and turned off video for all participants. This is because we are using a conference platform on Zoom, and this feature is activated to ensure that there is no disruptions to the speakers during the webinar. Participants may ask or post questions related to the presentations in the chat box during the webinar. The speakers will only answer questions that are clearly written and based on the presentations. Kindly refrain from marketing your goods and services in the chat box. Kindly also refrain from posting comments or remarks to questions posted in the chat box. The chat box is only for queries related to the presentations. And the organizer reserves the right to remove participants who run afoul of the webinar etiquette. The MPMA PLASTECH Month 2021 is brought to you by MPMA with the generous support of sponsors from the Malaysian plastics industry. Please allow me to thank all of our sponsors. Platinum sponsor, Monitor ERP System. Gold sponsors, PT Bobs Jakarta, Milliken Asia Private Limited, NGR Malaysia Sdn Berhad, Petronas Chemicals Group Berhad, Reifenhauser Bloemfilm GmbH, and Wien Muller & Holscher Asia Pacific Company Limited. Silver sponsors, Albert Sdn Berhad, Nord Mechanica SPA, and Cispro Software Malaysia Sdn Berhad. Bronze sponsors, Autodesk Malaysia, Ben Mayer Specialties Malaysia PLT, Borouge Private Limited, Husky Injection Molding Systems Malaysia Sdn Berhad, Recommend Malaysia Sdn Berhad, Sigma Soft Sdn Berhad, and Torre Plastics Malaysia Sdn Berhad. And other sponsor, Kryberg TPE Technology Malaysia Sdn Berhad. Thank you once again to all sponsors for making the MPMA PLASTECH Month 2021 a reality. Now, in appreciation to our platinum sponsor, Monitor ERP System, for their contribution towards the event, we will now play Monitor ERP's corporate video. Thank you to Monitor ERP System for its support towards the MPMA PLASTECH Month 2021. Now, without further ado, let me introduce to you our moderator for today, who is an expert in both the areas of plastics manufacturing and sustainability. She has more than 30 years of working experience in the flexible packaging industry, and as the Managing Director of Chonghua Plastics Sdn Berhad, she has supported her company and customers through various packaging evolutions. As the chairman of MPMA's Sustainability Subcommittee, she is a strong advocate on plastic sustainability and has spoken on numerous prestigious platforms and events. She is MPMA's First Lady for Plastic Sustainability, Ms. Wee Cheng Yun. Ms. Wee, I now pass the session to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Crystal. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to anybody that is on the other side of the globe. Today's webinar is one of the most important MPMA PLASTECH Month topics, as plastic sustainability is an area that is commonly misunderstood in terms of plastic's impact on the environment and the climate change. At last Tuesday's session, we heard all the new sustainable plastics packaging technologies which have been developed to make packaging more recyclable, to move the industry towards circular economy. Today, we have a dynamite lineup of speakers in which we will hear more about the global progress on circular economy and the Malaysia government's vision for plastic circularity. We will also be promoting and encouraging MPMA members to undertake life cycle assessments to better understand plastic's carbon footprint and its impact on climate change. Lastly, we will be hearing the importance of the Malaysian manufacturing sector, including plastics, in moving towards net zero to mitigate climate change and how we can be a part of this global movement. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, Mr. Arnold Wang. Mr. Arnold Wang is currently an experienced advisor at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, better known as EMF. He was previously responsible for the plastics program for EMF in China. Prior to this, he was the Deputy Secretary General of China Plastics Reuse and Recycling Association. Before joining the association, he held several positions in the marketing and product management function in international companies including Rom and Haas, Baroque, Specialty Tapes Company, and the garbage collection system company called NVAC. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Arnold Wang.
Thank you for the introduction. It is my honor to present our new plus economy in front of everybody. And please allow me to share the screen. Share. Great. Thank you. So today I will give you a brief introduction of our new plus economy, and this is also equal to a circular economy for plastics. So I'm Arnold Wang. I'm actually right now based in Beijing, in China. And you might ask me why we need to talk about plastic right now, and because our consumption model right now is linear. So meaning we take resources out of the ground. For example, we take oil and gas from under the ground, and then we make products that we want. For example, plastics, phones, and cars, and some other things we use. But when we no longer need them, we throw them away. So we call this a linear economy. Apparently, this linear economy is not sustainable, and it's not circular, so we need some solutions. And also based on our report, we see that 92% of our cars' time actually is parked in their parking lot without, so we don't use it. And also even during office hours, 60 of a European office is not used. So which is also a waste of our resources. And also in Denmark, we only use 1/3 of our garments in the closet. So this is apparently one scenario we feel all the time by everyone in front of the screen. And by 2050, the economy is projected to quadruple. And also our population will increase to 5 billion. So apparently, if we want to continue provide a better life for everybody, we need to change our economic model. And meanwhile, these 5 billion people generate a lot of waste. How do we want to deal with the waste we generated? We will generate at that time. We throw them into the ocean. Apparently, we can't allow it to happen. And also, we want to burn them. No. So apparently, we need some solutions to tackle the challenges we will face in the future. And we believe the solution is circular economy. But what is a circular economy? And there are 3 principles, and all driven by design. is because, as everybody has known already, a product's environmental footprint actually is 80% decided in their design stage. So we need to put a lot of focus, put a lot of our attentions on the design of a product. And also the three principles include eliminate waste and pollution, and circulate products and materials, and regenerate natural system. And eliminate the waste and pollution, actually, if we don't actually create the waste in the first place, we can solve the problem right at the beginning in the design, in a product's design stage. For example, Woohoo actually designed their product and they contain water with the packaging made of seaweed. So it can be biodegradable in several weeks. So this is an example of eliminate the waste and pollution in the first place. And also SodaStream, actually a startup company purchased by PepsiCo in 2019 by $3.2 billion US. And they actually make sparkling water in-house through and provide the service through reusable packaging or reusable cup, so that they don't create the waste also in the first place by applying reusable model. And the last principle is regenerate natural system. If we drink a can of Coke, we know that there is sugar inside. But when we plant the sugar cane, we don't want the growth of the sugar cane actually to deplete the nutrition in the soil. And also we don't want the growth of the sugar cane actually to affect the life cycle of other living beings. So the best scenario actually is like a tree. So when the tree's leaves actually fall to the ground, it will in the end become the nutrition for the growth of the tree itself. So that's the best scenario we wish to happen. So that's the three principles of a circular economy. But when we apply the three major principles to create a new system for plastics, then we get new plastic economy. So the vision for new plastic economy is that the plastic never becomes waste. Rather, they will become valuable resources, and then we keep them in the economy and out of the ocean. So right now, the new plastic economy initiative actually enters its second phase stage. And right now we have 11 core partners. Most of them are brand owners such as Unilever, PepsiCo, L'Oreal, Danone, Mars, and also environment service provider Veolia, and also plastic packaging converter Amcor, and also the parent company of Baruch, Borealis. And also we have two philanthropic partners, Oak Foundation and Amanda Schmidt. And also we have another around 30 participants in our members, including Kingfa from China and also Indorama from Thailand. So until now, we have around over 500 signatories in our global commitment group, and including 200 plus institutional signatories, such as World WWF and World Economic Forum, and the Consumer Schools Forum, and the universities and associations. And all the signatories in the world actually right now represent the whole plastic packaging value chain, and also represents 20% of all the plastic packaging used worldwide. And also in China, mainland and Hong Kong, we have 22 signatories. And I recruit most of them. And the latest one who joined our group are A.S. Watson and Jiangxi Greens Recycling, and also Wuhan University. As some of you have noticed, actually, we just released the global commitment 2021 progress report. This is the third progress report released after our launch in 2018 in Bali Island. So there are three takeaways actually from the progress report. So after decades of growth, so virgin plastics from our signatories actually seems to have used less virgin plastics in these 2 years. And progress has been made mainly by recycled content. I will give you more details later on. But also 2/3 of the United Nations member states actually support to sign a global treaty for tackling the plastic waste challenges. And the latest major country to support this initiative actually is America. So as you can see from this slide, so 2% virgin plastic reduction after 2 years, we launched the initiative. So the first year, 0.6% is reduced in 2019, comparing with the usage of virgin plastics in 2018. And then another 1.2% is reduced in 2020, comparing with the usage of virgin plastics in 2019. But actually, a lot of signatories made virgin plastic reduction a commitment in this year. So from the progress report, we can see that 20% virgin plastic reduction will be made by 2025. And but the most visible achievement actually is from recycled content. So comparing with last year, or comparing with 2019, around 30% of recycled content increase has been made by our signatories, especially by our brand owners and the retailers. But to reach to the final target by 2025, the 25%, we need 28% growth per year by our brand owners and retailers. So a lot of work needs to be done still. But as you can see, we also listed the top 20 companies, top 20 FMCG companies progress in our report. For the recycled content, actually, SC Johnson made the largest increase. So 25, not the increase, but the recycled content is the highest, 18.8%. And also, I think the second behind SC Johnson is L'Oreal, 15.8%. So you can see the personal care and the household products category actually made the most progress for recycled content. But another category, for example, the reusable packaging, actually, we actually didn't make any progress, and actually the percentage for reusable packaging has shrunk from 1.8% to 1.6%, so which is quite disappointing. But another initiative is our from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is the Plastic Pact Network, and this is for plastic for the global commitment initiative. It is the companies and organizations who will make commitment. But for Plastic Pact Network, it is the national level initiative. So, but also we have all the stakeholders along the value chain of plastic packaging to make progress towards the same goal, towards the same vision, the new plastic economy's vision. And right now we have 12 Plastic Pact in our network, and the latest Plastic Pact who joined the network is Kenya Plastic Pact. And also we have Canada and America Plastic Pact joining our network. But we only have 2 regional Plastic Pact Plastic Pact in our network. And one is the European Plastic Pact, and the other is Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Island Plastic Pact. All the Plastic Pact together represent over 30% of global GDP. But what they are doing actually in Plastic Pact. Let's give you an example with the first Plastic Pact, the UK Plastic Pact, to give you a better understanding. For example, the UK Plastic Pact actually is led by a RAP and Anna Foundation together, and it's similar to a global commitment. They have 4 boxes. For example, you need to take actions to eliminate problematic and unnecessary plastic packaging, and 100% of your packaging needs to be reusable, recyclable, and compostable. But one thing different from global commitment is that you need to have an exact number for the recycling rate. And right now, the UK's plastic packaging's recycling rate is 50% at the end of 2019, but their target by 2025 is 70%. So all the stakeholders and all the signatories in our Plastic Pact and also in our global commitment actually has reached to over 1,000. So they share the same vision: plastic never becomes waste. They will be kept in the economy and out of the ocean. But also I want to highlight our upstream innovation guide in this session. So the methodology or the behind this guideline is quite simple. So we want to tackle the root cause of a problem instead of its symptoms on the surface. So for example, if you arrived home and you found your apartment was flooded, so you immediately turn off the tap of the water, or you actually start mopping up the water on the floor. I think you will choose, everybody will choose to turn off the tap. So that's the methodology behind upstream innovation. And upstream innovation actually focuses on the work in the design stage, as we said earlier for Wuhu. And so including material selection, packaging design, business model. So we don't want a designer to just focus on the packaging, but rather they need to have a holistic approach, thinking of their product. So to put their delivery model, their product design and packaging design together, and to have the upstream innovation mindset first. But downstream innovation actually focuses on the plastic packaging after the plastic packaging becomes a waste. So they focus on collection, sorting, and reprocessing. But how do we make the upstream innovation happen in real life? So there are 3 strategies. The first strategy actually is elimination. And elimination actually has 2 routes. First is direct elimination, and the other is innovative elimination. So one packaging actually has no essential functions, we think that packaging can be immediately eliminated. So that's direct elimination. For example, Nestle actually eliminated the wrap around the bottleneck of their water, water they sold in Egypt. So they just made a small change to the in the cap. So the consumers can hear a small sound of click, then they know this water has never been opened. So to make sure the hygiene of the water is real for the consumers. And also Snappack actually get rid of the shrink film to wrap a bottle or some cans normally we use or we see in a supermarket. So they use some glues to stick together each can, the cans together, so that they don't need to use the shrink film anymore. But when a packaging actually has essential function, we need innovative elimination approach to eliminate those packaging, but still give the customer the same consumers the same customer experience or even better experience. For example, Danone actually in Indonesia actually eliminated the labels on their water. And also, I believe this case can be more frequently seen nowadays. I just see a news in that Coke also eliminated the usage of label in the Coke they sold in Korea. And the second strategy actually reuse. The reuse we think it's the time to scale up reuse, and that's exactly our signatories are doing right now. We want to give our consumers an option for reuse. If we only provide disposable packaging, disposable cup, and single-use plastics, then they don't have a choice to choose reuse. They don't have a choice to be circular, right? So that's exactly we want our brand owners to do in China, in Southeast Asia, and also in Europe. I can see more models and more pilot programs are launched in Europe, but not yet in Southeast Asia, and especially in China. We have lots of cases for reuse. For example, the EverJob. Actually, we know that for some cleaning products and some personal care products, especially for shampoos and also for hand wash creams, we know 90% of the ingredient is water. If we only sell concentrated formula or solid products, we don't need to. We will save a lot of transportation costs and also a lot of packaging costs. That's exactly our job is doing at the moment. And also SodaStream, we just mentioned earlier, and also Miva is partnering with Nestle to launch dispenser for selling instant coffee and pet food. Apparently, these two cannot mixed. But the last time I hear the result is quite encouraging for us. And they 2 years ago they only have 3 pilots in Switzerland, but right now they are bringing this business model to more supermarkets in Switzerland at the moment. But the last strategy is material circulation. Recycling is still very important for realizing a circular economy for plastics. But there are 3 routes for material circulation: recycling, composting, and substitution. But we know, but we only focus on the upstream innovations side of recycling, and we focus on the design stage. So we want to make sure once you have a product and we need to use some packaging for our product, we want you to make sure it can be recycled later on. For example, and want to make sure the packaging can be recycled at their best value in a closed loop possible. And if we take out the color, the pigments used in our packaging, we can largely increase the value of our packaging later on. For example, so these two are similar. So Coca-Cola actually is changing its iconic Sprite color from light green to clear or transparent. And this small change immediately increased the value of their PET bottles by 35%. I think it's more than that. If it is solid color for a PET bottle comparing with clear bottle, I think it's, the difference could be 2,000 or 3,000 per ton in China. And BioPack is actually not only sell compostable plastics, they actually created a closed loop system for their compostable packaging or compostable plastic they sell in the markets. And they not only collect the compostable plastics, but also they collect the organic food together back so that the packaging and the food can be composted together in an industrial compost field. And this is a very responsible action because they not only collect their own compostable packaging. They also call on other compostable packaging producers or businesses to join their initiative to form a closed loop together in Australia. And Mondi and Fiorini actually replaced their transparent plastic window with transparent paper, so that the whole packaging can be put into the paper-based stream to be recycled. But before, if it's a small plastic window, this small piece of window normally will not be recycled later on, and will be landfilled or incinerated. And also, Q Clip actually replaced their plastic clip with a paperboard clip, so that so this is an alternative material example. And they not only replace it with paper, but also they reduce the use of paper for the packaging. And this is my whole presentation for today. If you have any questions or want to explore more about the circular economy or what we are doing in China or in the world, please contact me through WeChat or my mobile phone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arnold Wang. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the third Global Progress Report. Very interesting, and giving us great ideas and inspirations of what the future sustainable plastics will look like. Okay, now let's go to our second topic of today. The second topic of today is from Datuk Jana Santiran Anak Lelaki Munyayan. Datuk Jana is the Deputy Secretary General of Environment for Ministry of Environment and Water Malaysia. Datuk Jana has been attached to the government for more than 25 years. He has served in numerous ministries, including Ministry of Education, Ministry of Housing and Local Government, Ministry of Transport, and Ministry of Finance. Datuk Jana holds a Master of Management and a Bachelor of Arts from University of Malaya. Please welcome Datuk Jana Santiran.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. First of all, good afternoon to all the distinguished speakers, participants, and most importantly, MPMA as the organizer for the forum today. So let me take you all through on the positive side of the plastic industry. And my talk here will be basically looking at Malaysian plastic sector. First, would like to take you all through the positive side of it. As we are aware, the turnover of this business is quite big. It has been increasing. It has been contributing a lot to the economy of Malaysia. In the year of 2018, it has been contributing about 30.98 billion ringgit Malaysia, of course. 2019, it has increased to 47.35 billion ringgit, and in the year 2020, it has gone to about 48.46 billion. And what we are looking for now, this business on plastic will increase, and it's not going to be reduced. But of course, on all this increase, there is also the negative side of it. That comes to my next slide, where basically we'll be speaking on the impact of plastics to the environment. This is what we are very concerned of. Now, when we speak on the impact, based on GEMBAC study, which is done in 2015, Malaysia is ranked at number 8 for the mismanagement of plastic waste leaked into the ocean. One recent study now, the current study based in the year 2016, Malaysia, of course, is getting better. From the 8th, we have gone to the 16th place, but the volume of the mismanaged plastic is still high. That's about 0.33 million tons. So in the Malaysian context, it is reported that there are about 16.78 kilogram per person annually, and it is also recorded that this is the highest usage among individuals in the region. And the other thing that in 2016 again, what we have found out that 1.07 million ton plastics waste generated, and 0.14 or 0.37 million million tons of plastics waste leaked into the ocean yearly, and only around 24% of the plastic waste are recycled in the year 2019. That was, I started off by giving you the positive side of it. There are also the impact of plastics, and of course, the first speaker has spoken a lot about ways to overcome. He has spoken about circularity of the plastics, which I think we totally agree. We have learned. We are working with MPMA now to handle this, to maneuver this, and of course, very much discussion about using linear economy to circular economy on this plastic industry. Of course, when it's circular plastic, circular economy, the objectives are quite clear. We have to address the plastic pollution in Malaysia on a sustainable manner, guide and promote sustainable business practices, and harmonize actions along the life cycle approach. Now, with that, in order for us to mitigate this problem, mitigate the impact, CASA, the Ministry of Environment and Water, has introduced. The first is the Malaysian Malaysia Plastic Sustainable Roadmap 2021 to 2030, which entirely shifting the plastic value chain to a sustainable practice, adopting the circular economy principles from, of course, linear to circular economy. And globally, circular economy model has been acknowledged as the most ideal strategy, as it focuses on eliminating waste and pollution, circulate products and materials, and regenerate nature ecosystem. So coming back to this roadmap, the objectives of the roadmaps are very clear. One, to address the plastic pollution in Malaysia sustainably. And the second one, to guide and promote sustainable business practices. And of course, the third objective will be to harmonize actions by all parties along life cycle approach. So 6 national targets were set. First, of course, at the current phase now, we wanted to phase out problematic, let me repeat, problematic single-use plastics. So the list of problematic single-use plastics will be constructed based on a set of criteria. And most of the time in Malaysia, what we do is that we discuss, we do some due diligence with all respective parties, including the producers. And in the year 2022, we are targeting as a post-consumer halal RPT standards to chart path away from the halal certification and products made from recycled resins. Year 2025, what we are targeting is that 25% of used plastic packaging to be recycled. Year 2030, 100% of plastic packaging to be recycled, and 15% of average recycled content to be used as input material in plastic manufacturing, whereby in the year 2030, we are looking at 76% average collected for recycling by year 2030. And then the strategies that's been outlined in this roadmap, the important ones are 4 strategies. Firstly, it will improve product designs, collection and sorting outcomes through sustainable product design and collection method. I think on the design, it was well spoken by the first speaker just now. We are also learning. Again, I'm telling you that we are going to work together with all the industries to make it a better product. And I think this is super crucial to ensure that materials are kept in circulation for as long as possible in its highest possible value, and can be easily recovered and recycled and effectively reused. Improve product design includes simplifying a product to be monomaterial as an alternative to flexible packaging. Using recycled resin as material input, a focus on the design element of plastic allows us to produce plastic where material value can be optimized and be kept in the loop for longer. Strengthen plastic waste collection and sorting out. This one I think many times MPMA as at least my two engagement with Ms. CYV, she has reminded that it's not only the role of the producers, but also the rakyat or the public at large. We do take note of that, and me and my team will definitely ensure that all of us are working towards the same goal. Of course, the second strategy will be market development and innovation to grow circular economy through three key innovation strategies. The first phase out, products that does not severe an essential function need to be indirectly phased out through innovation. This includes development of new products that function similarly or better without jeopardizing the quality and efficiency, while remaining easily recyclable or can be disposed naturally. The second will be reusing packaging rather than discarding after one use. For example, refill at home and return on the go. The third will be material circulation. Plastic waste has to be properly collected, sorted, treated, and processed into recycled resins to ensure the material remain in the loop for as long as possible. The third strategy will be building capacity for reprocessing and manufacturing of recycled product nationally. In this context, the most significant limitation of recycling is that not all the materials can be recycled. And public's confusion mostly about types of materials that can be recycled often leads them to placing recyclables into the trash and being washed, vice versa. So to move forward, Malaysia needs to look into advanced technology to improve the efficiency of the recycling industry. And the fourth strategy will be harmonizing standards, regulating and message across jurisdiction. In this context, at present, of course, standards, regulations, and messages vary widely across different ministries and agencies in Malaysia. This provides a confusion outcome for businesses and consumers looking at the right thing. Harmonizing Malaysia's standards and policies to give a clear direction of best practices will lead to a better outcome in managing plastic waste. Now, the transitioning to sustainable plastic economy. So in the transition of a sustainable plastic economy, 4 key enablers were identified and highlighted. First, I think all of you are quite aware on the extended producer's responsibility. As of now, producers only takes care of their manufacturing and product distribution. But under EPR scheme, producers is responsible financially or physically across plastic value chain, including designing, improvement of products and treatment, or even disposal of their post. Obliged parties will contribute to an eco-modulated fee to fund operational costs, which includes collect, sort, recycle, and dispose of their post-consumer waste. EPR will be implemented in phases approach, which starts in phase 1, inceptions of voluntary EPR. Of course, it has started 2021 until end of 2022. Phase 2, adoption of voluntary EPR 2023 and up to 2025. Phase 3, implementation of mandatory EPR, which we are looking at 2026 and above. So again, it gives everybody enough time and room for change and adopt to the changes that's being brought forward on this industry. EPR scheme will be driven by an independent entity known as, of course, Producer Responsibility Organization, PRO. As for now, we know Maria is championing this. and who are functioning as the PRO, spearheading the voluntary EPR. Pro is expected to be sustaining based on industry contribution, but of course, CASA will work with all relevant ministries and industries, representatives to develop EPR governance framework prior to implementation of the mandatory EPR. So the other thing is on halal RPET PT. There's a need to provide regulatory clarity, guidance regarding the use of recycled plastic in food contact packaging through revisions of the 1983 Food Act and issuance of halal certification standard. This will reduce for companies. This will reduce risk for the companies that would otherwise be unwilling to produce and use recycled plastics for their packaging. Previously, the existing standards of halal packaging fall under MS 2565 2014 halal packaging, stated that the packaging made for direct food contact application shall not be made for recycled material. Thus, under this standard, it is clear that the food grade recycled content cannot be used for halal food contact packaging. Looking at the potential of bottle-to-bottle initiative as low-hanging fruit to spur the recycling rate of PET through circular economy model in Malaysia, CASA has just justified the needs for halal certification of RPT as well as the material purification process. As the result, Malaysia will recognize the use of recycled resin in producing food contact packaging. Hence, the current development of halal consumable goods general requirement MS 2738 2021 is expected to push the domestic, regional as well as global halal RPET market. Local recyclers and producers are encouraged to provide better recycling facilities, which are in compliance with the halal cleansing requirement. And the fourth will be on communication, circularity, and sustainability. We definitely cannot deny that it's challenging to get back used plastics from from consumers and then transferring it to recycling plants. Brand owners play an important role in conveying the message and influencing consumers' behavior to create a more circular and a sustainable plastic economy. The right consumer messaging from brands can reinforce positive new beliefs among the customers, shaping emerging habits and ultimately nudge consumers towards more environmentally responsible behaviors through the push and pull effect of new innovations. And the other key enablers, the first will be alternative financing. Financial institutions have key role in encouraging and stimulating circularity by investing in sustainable consumption and production. Plastic data analytic, the existence of complete and consolidated data is crucial to map the market potential through the material flow analysis. Thus, there is a need to collect data through an open data platform, which it can be done more systematically and of course transparent and holistically. And now, speaking about the Malaysian Plastic Sustainability Roadmap 2021 to 2030, so the overall action plans and initiatives under the Plastic Sustainability Roadmap focuses at first phase and early years in second phase is on plastic packaging. Yeah. Before we gradually move to electrical and electronics, constructions, and automotive. Research and development financing alternatives leverage on existing funding will be available under MOSTI and MAIDA. We call for support and collaboration with all the industry players to ensure the successful implementation of this roadmap. So basically now, what needs to be done? One, of course, we are pushing on EPR. Yeah, as I mentioned in the previous slides, EPR is one of the important policy instrument under the circular economy approach that can effectively push for plastic sustainability. Through EPR, all stakeholders in the plastic value chain are given significant financial or physical responsibility across plastic value chain, including designing, improvement of product design, and treatment or disposal of the post-consumer products. So packaging innovation, sustainable design, one of the key steps in plastic sustainability is to ensure that materials are kept in circulation for as long as possible in its highest possible value and can easily be recovered and recycled and effectively reused. Design is one of the key important elements in the circular economy approach, where the aim is to design out waste from the ecosystem. Public's confusion about the types of materials that can be recycled often leads them to replacing recyclables, which I've also spoken earlier. Products needs to be redesigned to ensure it does not harm the nature. Of course, it has to be managed well. And of course, 3R, again, empower the 3R by reduce usage of plastic, by practicing bring your own bags during shopping, bottles and food containers, reuse post-consumer and reuse post-consumer plastics, and recycle all the recyclable plastic waste. And of course, the other strategy will be on separation at source. This simple step can help the recycler for easier recycling process. Start small steps at the house, given a greater impact to the environment. And with that, thank you very much to the organizers, to our fellow friends, and of course, the co-speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jana. Thank you. Thank you for affirmation that CASA will be working together with the Malaysian plastics industries and sharing with us the targets and aspirations to achieve a sustainable plastic economy in Malaysia. Thank you very much, Dr. Jana. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard Dr. Jana Santiran echoing life cycle approach to harmonize actions for the creation of a circular economy. We are honored today to have Dr. Cheong Meng Soon today to speak on life cycle analysis. So Dr. Cheong Meng Soon is a senior lecturer and research fellow in the School of Mechanical Engineering, University Technology Malaysia since 2017. He received his PhD in mechanical engineering from University Technology Malaysia in 2015. His main research interest focuses on technologies and methodologies that contribute to a low carbon footprint, particularly in the energy and manufacturing sector. In recent years, he ventured his research interest into life cycle assessment, dedicated to helping the Malaysian industry to assess their environmental load and impacts towards carbon neutrality and circular economy. He has been working closely with the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology, Japan, on developing LCI datasets for various Malaysian industries. One of them is the plastics industries. His interest in the plastic industry carbon footprint is not limited to manufacturing, but extend to end-of-life disposal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Cheong Meng Soon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wee. Right, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to some. Thank you for attending this webinar session, where I'll be sharing my take on the circular economy and also on managing the carbon footprint for the plastic industry. And first of all, I must thank MPMA for inviting me to give the talk for today. So after the last two presentations, I think it is quite clear that the motivation for us to achieve circular economy is very clear. Plastic is an essential, let's just put it that way, for our daily life. Everyone uses it. It's pretty much used in every way. And plastic lasts a very long time, probably more than all of us. But globally, the amount of plastic being recycled are actually still very low. And the number, I think from what we've seen just now, probably around 9 to 10 plus. Some country probably go slightly higher. And that is the worry here, because the population will keep growing, the use for plastic will also growing. But if the waste itself is not properly being managed, in the end of the day, all those plastic waste will just end up in either landfill, if fortunately, otherwise it will end up in the ocean. So it's polluting the earth very, very severely, in fact. And therefore, there has been a talk in probably starting from the past 5-10 years, how to reduce the plastic waste and so on. And post-COVID, I would say, this is when everything really started booming. Everyone talk about the circular economy, how to reach that. So today, this is what the main topic that I'll be sharing today, and also on the carbon footprint, which I'll be doing on the second part of the presentation. So first of all, let's look at how much waste that we are talking about here, that Malaysians ourselves actually are producing. So the numbers can actually slightly vary depending on how one conduct to calculate the amount of plastic waste. So this here is what we have, our attempt to find out how much the plastic waste that we are actually talking about that are not being managed properly. So this is a very typical material flow analysis, which one would do to, in fact, for achieving circular economy, this is perhaps the most important element in the analysis itself. We need to trace where the material actually go. Does it go back to the recycling, go back to the manufacturing line, or does it end up in the landfill and so on? So the analysis that we're using is actually called the material flow analysis. So you may see here we have the domestic waste generation, which is from us ourselves, the daily use, all the plastic waste that we are generating, also from the industry, the commercial. And let's not forget that we also import plastic, even though nowadays it's much lesser compared to, let's say, 2018. That's when all the news are about we are importing the plastic that we can't even process. So the study that we conduct here is based on the literature data and all the information we can find online. To conduct a field study at this scale is pretty much out of our league, it's out of our capability. So what we found is almost 24%, almost 1/4 of our total solid waste generated daily are in fact plastic. But unfortunately, not all of them go to recycling once they become waste. And a lot of them, in fact, are actually single-use plastic, even though nowadays probably slightly lower compared to 5 or 10 years before this. But still, the population growing, the waste is still, amount of waste still keep growing. And the number that we get here is a very conservative estimation. Almost 40% are actually being recycled, but we are quite skeptical about this number. And I think from the presentation from Dr. Jana just now, also confirmed that it is actually probably around 20 to at most 30%, let's just put that way. But regardless what, the focus will always in the amount that not being managed properly. If it's not recycled, we only export a small amount of the plastic waste. In the end, all of that, we just either go to disposal in the landfill, or they are being mismanaged and going to ocean. And even by our conservative estimation here, it's almost close to 60% of the plastic waste actually end up in the environment, let's put it that way. So that is the most worrying part. And very big reason for that we have end up with so much plastic waste is because now pretty much everyone nowadays, up until this point, we are always practicing the linear economy. We already heard that from Ms. Arnold just now. Linear economy basically means it's exactly what we're doing right now. We take the resource, we make it into plastic product, we use it, some probably we recycle, we try our best to recycle, but in the end, most of it actually go to disposal. So it's exactly like the diagram shown in the left-hand side here. So this is a very conventional take, make, and dispose model. And this is what pretty much everyone is practicing right now. And to turn it into circular economy, which is the diagram on the right, graphically, this is exactly how we'll show it. Make the loop going back to the upstream of the usage larger, more go back to reuse, and minimize the resource consumption and also the disposal. So graphically, it is that simple to illustrate, but in real life, in practice, this is certainly more difficult than just enlarging or make the arrow bigger like this. But the philosophy behind the circular economy is always to make the full use of the raw material or the resource that we are actually consume at the first place. So keep it in the loop, use it as long as possible, and eventually at one point we have to dispose it. But even disposal itself, we want to extract the maximum value out from it. And at the same time, keep the environmental damage to the minimum. So that is the philosophy behind the circular economy. And it's not just for the plastic industry. It's pretty much applicable to every sector that we can ever encounter. It could use for other manufacturing industry, for instance, the metal industry. Let's take a very simple example. So metal industry are very circular, at least definitely more circular than the plastic industry, because the recycling for steel is in metal is in high demand. So pretty much you don't see metal waste just throwing on, in the environment, or someone will always collect it. So those are the sign for high circular economy. And from the perspective, from the practical perspective, the circular economy, it cannot be achieved, truly speaking, just relying on recycling, because our consumption will go higher. There'll be more plastic product being made. So ultimately, that will lead to more plastic waste as well. So if we are only relying on recycling itself to make the plastic economy circular, the recycling rate, the capacity for the recycling in the nation will, at one point, will definitely suffer to keep up with the growth in the product itself. So moving on from 3R, which is the one that we usually know, reduce, reuse, and also recycling. Nowadays, many are talking about at least 5R, 6R, some even go to 9 or 10R to a very extreme case. So what I have here is a typical 6R practice, which is probably not every R applicable to everyone or every industry, but generally the process itself, the R has to start from the very upstream of the manufacturing process, or even start from the consumer itself. So it's not just a problem for the plastic manufacturers themselves only. It's also about the consumer as well. The consumer needs to be well educated. They need to know that they probably don't need every single thing that they have right now. There is a chance that they can reduce the consumption of certain product, like how we've seen in the first presentation just now. As for the plastic manufacturer themselves, they also need to invest into redesign the product, because the product nowadays, the way perhaps everyone practicing is try to keep the cost minimum. I think that naturally, if you are in business, then that's what everyone will be aiming for, and it need to last the lifetime that it is intended to. And moving forward, if let's say we are serious about circular economy, all this has to be changed in a way. We need to, the product itself needs to be designed to last for longer time. The lifespan of the product needs to be longer. It needs to be able to reuse, start from there. After few reuse, if let's say it already broken or in any way, it can be repaired or remanufactured. That's the 4th R that we're talking about here. And in the end of that, if it's beyond repair, then probably it could be recycled. So the idea is that the product itself, we can't follow, most likely we can't follow the same design as we are using right now. Another simple example, a lot may say that our application cannot use recycled resin. because recycled resin don't have the property of virgin resin, let's say. And that is purely because we are using the same design as the virgin plastic and apply it on the recycled plastic. They recycled resin, sorry. So they obviously has a very different material characteristic. So in a way, the design itself needs to accommodate the changes that we are hoping for here. And of course, we try to keep the material in use for as long as possible. At one point, it will still needs to be disposed. We can't reuse it anymore. We can't repair it anymore. We can't recycle it anymore. Eventually, it has to come to the 6R here, which is a recovery. And proper recovery, make sure that it doesn't go into the environment. And last, the disposal itself, even we preferably it's not just simply put it in the landfill, but something like a waste to energy power plant that can produce energy by disposing the waste itself. So we are still like squeezing the last bit of value out from the material itself. So that is really what a full circular economy is actually aiming to achieve. And the emphasis is always on the three element that I put on the right hand side there, to achieve the closed cycle, to use the renewable energy, because all the stages we keep using the value. Yes, we manage to achieve the circular economy, but we are using energy to repair, remanufacturing, or recycle the material itself still. So renewable energy will be very crucial here, and that actually lead to the next topic, the second topic here, which is the carbon footprint. And also is everything has to come from the system thinking rather than just the component thinking only. However, there's one thing that we don't hear frequent enough though. Everyone say that we need to achieve circular economy, but hardly we hear someone saying how we actually measure circular economy. And not many people, it's not actually a coincidence that not many people are actually talking about that. Because the short answer for that is, truly speaking, no one really knows how we can properly measure if we achieve circular economy or not. The reason being is that circular economy can be applied to many fields, and there are many factors, many dimensions, they call it. It's a multi-dimension problem. So in the research field, circular economy, there are indexes to measure circular economy. In fact, there are a lot of them. It will depend on the spatial dimension that we're talking about, or the scope that we're talking about. There are micro level, there are macro level as well. So depending on the scope that we are talking about here, the way we measure the circular economy is slightly different. But nonetheless, all of them are actually used to measure the different R that we strategize here. So all these R, the 3R, 6R, generally in circular economy, they are being called the circular economy strategy, or CE strategy. So the indexes that used to measure, to define how well we achieve the circularity, is actually to measure the strategy that we are choosing there. And they could be qualitatively, they could be quantitatively. So in short, no one actually has a clear guideline. This is the index that you should be using, but rather than which approach that you are choosing and then how it can be measured. And while we are trying to achieve circular economy, let's not forget another thing, which is the climate change. The Earth's global average temperature is forever increasing since the Industrial Revolution. And at the rate right now, it's increasing almost 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade. This is the average temperature. And truly speaking, this is non-reversible. Once it go up, it stay high forever, unless we really become carbon negative. And only then probably the temperature will drop down. Otherwise, it will be just keep growing, and the climate change is definitely visible, and everyone can feel it as well. And to date, already more than 100 countries pledge to achieve carbon neutrality in 30 years or so. Some aim to achieve by 2050. Some aim to achieve by slightly earlier or later. We, Malaysia, also the Prime Minister already pledged to achieve carbon neutrality by as early as 2050. And in fact, based on the readiness index, the net zero carbon readiness index come out by the KPMG, we are actually not doing so bad. Measuring across the industry in Malaysia, the power sector and also transportation, those are generally the few high CO2 sector. So we are actually ranking about 21st, right behind China, in fact. So the readiness for our industry in the country are actually quite ready for these changes. But for us to manage the carbon footprint itself, the first step is actually to understand where the carbon footprint coming from. So on the left here, I just give a very simple and very straightforward example of let's say a life cycle for a water bottle, PET bottle. So from the raw material extraction until the manufacturing of the bottle itself, the packaging supply, the bottling itself, then transportation further, all of these stages, in fact, associate with certain amount of emission and even certain type as well. So usually in the carbon footprinting, or when we measure carbon neutrality or net zero carbon, we are talking about the CO2 equivalent. This is the term that everyone is talking about. Even though some process maybe like the manufacturing of the plastic itself probably doesn't give out CO2, but it might give out other type of emission, which we have to measure its impact to the climate change by converting it to a CO2 equivalent. So it's almost like how much CO2 that we're talking about there. So the scientific name for the impact on the environment that we are talking about here is the global warming potential, or the greenhouse gas emission. That's how we usually put it. And usually across all the industry, all application, the carbon footprint is pretty much everywhere in the life stages of a product itself. It comes from, like I say, from the raw material just now, to the transportation, the fuel, the electricity that we're using, even the recycling itself. Even though it's good for the environment, but recycling itself actually give CO2. But if it's comparatively lower than processing a new virgin resin, then it's justifiable. It's a lower footprint product in the end. And there are many ways of doing to solve these two problems: how to measure the circular economy and also the carbon footprinting, to trace the carbon footprint. Because for us to make the changes to whatever the practice the company are actually practicing right now, the first step is actually to trace where the material are lost, where the carbon footprint are actually coming from. So traditionally, when someone talk about circular economy, we talk about material flow analysis. Carbon footprinting, you may heard the term emission factor very regularly. And for us, because we are from university, we are from research field, so we generally believe in a top-down approach. So we always think of the holistic solution that can preferably can cover both. So therefore, we are a true believer in the life cycle assessment. So it's a systematic analysis that track the resource consumption, including the material for the primary material that we are talking about here, let's say the plastic resin. So it's a systematic analysis that take into account every stage of the life of the product, and we analyze the potential environmental impact out from it. And the good thing about it is, if we can achieve a full LCA study, the impact that we can analyze is actually not only limited to the climate change or the carbon footprint that we're talking about. The typical LCA study, we can cover a lot of impact, not beyond the climate change. Of course, the priority now is the carbon footprint, the CO2 emission, the greenhouse gas emission. But who knows, 5 years, 10 years down the road, there might be other environmental concern coming up. Let's say the water pollutant. So at that point, we could just start a whole new study again. But if let's say we are opting for a more holistic solution like LCA from the beginning, by then the changes that we need to make is really minimal for us to cover that as well already. So it sounds all good, but there is always some downside for LCA. And the most obvious is that it's a very data intensive analysis. In fact, it takes everyone's contribution to accomplish. It's not that someone like me say that, okay, we want to do LCA for this industry, we can just do it on our own. No, because it's very data intensive. It needs specifically 2 data. The step for LCA is actually straightforward, like the box I show on the right-hand side here. So there is a goal and scope definition because that affect how we look at the impact very, very much. Second is the inventory analysis. This is where the old data are actually being needed. And then go to the impact assessment, then we can interpret the result. On the data itself, specifically, we need 2 very important data, which is one on the foreground data, we call it. These are the data related to the activity of a manufacturing process, let's say. So how much is actually being consumed? How much resin actually being consumed? Additive, all the consumable that usually you found in your company your factory, for instance. On top of that, once we have that, usually it has to be multiplied with certain factors, if you think it that way. Those are called the background data. So the background data for LCA study, it extends beyond the emission itself only. If we only look at the CO2 or carbon footprinting itself, then this could be the emission factor. But generally for the LCA study, the full LCA study, we call it the LCI life cycle inventory database. So this is the piece of very crucial information that we need also for LCA study for us to analyze the impact. There are many global LCI database available. If you are familiar with LCA, you probably heard about EcoInvent, you probably heard about Gabi. So all that are LCI database, except that they only represent the country those databases are actually from. For us, we need a database which is exclusively for Malaysia because it has to reflect practice that the industry in our country actually making the product itself. So these 2 are by far the most the primary challenge for someone to complete a comprehensive LCA study. And for that reason, we actually came up with MPMA to try to start a LCA study for the plastic industry itself. So at this point, our aim is actually to collect the data enough that we can make into our own LCI data set, which later on for all the industry, the whole industry can actually use it to analyze the environmental impact. And also as part of it, we also want to try to come out with how we can actually measure the carbon neutrality for the Malaysian plastic. So our scope here is looking at the plastic industry as a whole, rather than just one single factory here. And because the time that we start this project, actually, we start talking about this project is actually quite over. It was last year at the mid of the COVID-19. So progress are a bit slow. So right now we are in the recovery stage. So we are starting to reach out for the collaborator, the plastic converter or manufacturer, so that we can collect more foreground and background data in order to continue this project. And hopefully in 2 years' time, we're able to finish the LCA analysis. We can pinpoint where is the hotspot for the industry, where we need the improvement needs to be made, the changes needs to be made. And of course, we are, as a university, we always constantly fighting for project funding, and hopefully this we can find it very soon as well. And last but not least, I would like to summarize my presentation today by talking about the critical success factor that can enable the circular economy and also carbon neutrality. So no doubt it's a big change from whatever we already had so far. So this year, I list down 3. There are, I think, 5 to 6 factors that someone studied is not something that, from my own opinion, is a study conducted by someone. I list out three most the crucial success factor that can enable this. So first is it has to come from the leadership and the top management commitment. The government can only push so much. The changes has to come from the public itself. Needs to be sustainable awareness, aware of the sustainability, and also the manufacturers as well. So the adopting the circular thinking and also the radical innovation, one would call it, using a different alternative material that can easily be being circular, recycle more. So all that has to come from the top management commitment. And of course, at one point down the road, the government is going to impose legislation, like we heard from the last the presentation just now. So the legislation will come. So hopefully by then, since we are talking about the start now, so by then we should be able to have a tools that can measure our own performance, and we already know where we need to improve. And of course, same with any changes since the past. Every major industrial evolution is not revolution here. So every industry evolution here, it requires the support from the government as well. The funding in the R&D, in the changes that the company needs to make. So all these three, I would say, is perhaps the most critical success factor that will decide whether we can achieve that in these two in a 30 years time or not. And that would be all for me. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Cheong. So plastics industries, you heard from Dr. Cheong. Step up to Dr. Cheong's call to action, sign up and support the research is going to be implemented by Dr. Cheong, and start doing the LCA. And thank you very much, Dr. Cheong, again for enlightening and reminding us the use of LCA analysis to measure circularity of our product, and the link from LCA to carbon neutrality, which makes my work very easy to transit to our next topic. So, ladies and gentlemen, we saved the best for last.
Okay.
Right? So, let me welcome Dr. Kalaniti Nesaretnam. She will speak on climate crisis, the need for net zero in the plastics industry. Dr. Kalaniti Nesaretnam is co-founder of Climate Governance Malaysia, CGM, which is the country's chapter of the World Economic Forum's Climate Governance Initiative. She is currently an independent non-executive director at IOI Corporation Berhad, a public listed company. She is an ESG advocate and recently completed the Oxford University's leading sustainable corporations program at the Said Business School. She held the position of director, product development and advisory services at the Malaysian Palm Oil Board, and subsequently as minister in the Embassy of Malaysia to Belgium and mission to the European Union. Please welcome Dr. Kalaniti.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wee, and thank you so much for that very kind introduction. So today I will talk about, as you've already said, climate crisis and the need for net zero in the plastics industry. Can I have the next slide, please? As Ms. Wee already has mentioned, I am speaking today as co-founder of Climate Governance Malaysia, or CGM for short. CGM is a World Economic Forum initiative, and we're very proud to be the second country to be recognized by the World Economic Forum. We are a global network of directors of public listed companies, and our mission is to persuade companies like yours, to reduce their carbon footprint. So I'm glad that Dr. Chong has taken us through the LCA as well. Next slide, please. So today in my presentation, I will start by demonstrating to all of you that we have a climate crisis and why we all need to play our part to address it. I will then touch on net zero and how countries are responding. Again, Dr. Chong has already given us a little brief on this. I will move on to consequences faced by companies that do not start their journey as soon as possible. I will then end with what you can do and the governance principles to assist you in your journey. Next slide, please. So we have all been through the pandemic, but the bigger elephant in the room is still climate change and biodiversity loss, which unfortunately is not getting the attention it deserves. Next slide, please. So climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution remain the three existential crises today. So pollution here is, air pollution, water pollution, and plastic pollution. And I'm so glad to hear from Datuk Jana, Malaysia's strategy. I'm so glad that MPMA is starting their journey on looking at life cycle analysis, and also from Mr. Arnold Wang that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, what is happening internationally. So we really hope that the progress in addressing, reducing, eliminating, and recycling plastic, will be heightened and hastened so that, we address this as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So let us examine together the facts of what the situation is like today. Scientists are continuously measuring carbon dioxide levels, and they have reached unprecedented levels, as you can see in this slide. The safe level is 350 parts per million, and we are now currently at 419. Next slide, please. From this slide, you can see that the carbon dioxide levels have been the highest in 2 million years. This is causing global warming as the carbon dioxide is trapping heat within the atmosphere. Next slide, please. Just in the last 6 months, and especially this summer, we have seen unprecedented climate catastrophes. I know participants in the audience today, at least the older ones, will agree with me that the temperature in Malaysia has got worse in the last 50 years. We are definitely feeling the heat. A heat wave that struck the Pacific Northwest of America killed more than 800 people with temperatures that reached 49.6 degrees centigrade. Now, this was 11 degrees above the previous all-time high. The fires, then, we found fires after the Pacific Northwest. We saw fires in Turkey, in Greece, and in California. And the Amazon rainforest is burning away from forest clearings. Next slide, please. Sea temperatures are also rising, and this is causing more severe hurricanes and typhoons every year. The increased temperature is also causing Antarctic and Arctic ice melts, which are raising global sea levels. Recently, we saw Belgium, Germany, and the United Kingdom hit by devastating floods. Closer to home, China, Japan, Philippines, and India were also hit by more severe typhoons causing serious flooding. Next slide, please. This slide shows that there were more climate refugees in 2020 compared to war displacement. I think you would be surprised with this data, but this is what we have researched and found. Next slide, please. So what about Malaysia? Are we immune to climate change? Because what I've been showing so far is, what's happening internationally. The answer is no. We are also definitely feeling the heat, as I said earlier. Recently, we experienced extreme flooding and increased flash floods. We have had prolonged drought in 2020 for more than 5 months. How will we in this city survive if, for example, in future, our catchment areas go dry? Those of you who are living in the Klang Valley, we've had, I think over the last year, 3 water cuts, of course, for other reasons, but it was very painful to all of us. Can you imagine if this became a permanent scenario? I sit on the board of an oil palm company, and the oil palm fruit yield suffered so badly in 2020 with the drought. We have been discussing at the board level water stress to the trees and how to address it, and it will definitely be an expensive affair. With the dry weather in previous years, we've also suffered haze, and that caused a lot of health problems. So this slide that I've just projected shows you projections, climate change projections up to 2050, but this is on a 1.5 degree scenario. Unfortunately, at COP26, we were told that we will be facing 1.5 by 2030 if the world doesn't come together to do something. We are already at 1.2 degree rise in temperature. So these numbers that I'm showing here for Malaysia, and I'm sure you'll be getting the slides later. I'm sorry, it's a very busy slide. For temperature rise, for annual rainfall and sea level rise, will be more alarming if we are going to be looking at a 2.7 to 3 degree rise in temperature. Next slide, please. So the National Hydraulic Research Institute, or NARIM, has projected that sea levels are rising, especially around Port Klang, and that the area in red will be underwater by 2050. Again, this is on a 1.5 degree scenario. So in 8 years, because 2030 is in 8 years' time, unless we do something drastic, even areas around Puchong will be affected. So if you have assets around Puchong, they may be underwater. And if you live there, get a boat, as you may have a waterfront home. Next slide, please. So I hope I have convinced you, but if you're not convinced, this is research from Princeton University, and they reported recently that there is a 99% probability that climate change is due to human activity. Also, during the pandemic, the carbon dioxide levels fell by 7%, and proving conclusively that human activity is causing the rise in temperature. Next slide, please. So what is net zero? In 2015, countries came together, 196 countries came together under the Paris Agreement, and they agreed that if we do not limit the increase in temperature to 1.5 degrees, anything above this would have catastrophic and unacceptable consequences. Initially, this was via the nationally determined contributions, but later countries then decided to balance their GHG emissions with an equal amount of sequestration. This is referred to as net zero. It was hoped that by achieving net zero status by 2050, the increase in temperature would be capped to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Next slide, please. The next few slides shows the climate commitments of countries around the world. Next slide, please. And I'm starting here with China, that have pledged to be carbon neutral by 2060. I put up China because at COP26 in Glasgow recently, the developed nations were pointing fingers at China and India. But really, if you look on a per capita basis, the biggest emitter to date is USA. Next slide, please. This slide, again, a very busy slide, but it shows the commitments of other countries. Many countries have come together to pledge net zero targets. And of course, Europe leads the way. Next slide, please. But despite all the commitments of all these countries, the world is not on track to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade. In fact, IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, warns that we must halve our emissions by 2030. You must halve, but currently the trajectory is that we are going to have a 16% increase in emissions by 2030. So this is really, awful, and I think it's really alarming, and we definitely need to do something. So at the next slide, please. At the recently concluded COP26, which was rather disappointing, governments have been asked to revisit and strengthen their NDCs before the end of 2022 to bring these in line with the Paris Agreement temperature goal. So the alarming thing is that if it's not halted and countries do not redo their nationally determined contributions by the end of 22, we are looking at a 2.7 to 3 degrees centigrade rise in temperature. This will be the tipping point and irreversible, as Dr. Chong said. Of course, many of us won't be around, but our children and our grandchildren will definitely suffer. Next slide, please. So Malaysia also has set a net zero target, as Dr. Chong mentioned, to reduce emissions as early as 2050. And the My Climate Action Council under the Prime Minister, headed by the Prime Minister, they have a lot of initiatives, as you can see in the slide, and also a possible carbon tax. And I think you also heard from Dr. Jana earlier when we were talking about the voluntary carbon markets and the domestic emissions trading scheme. So lots of initiatives next year will be rolled up, very good for us. So we really hope that Malaysia will do its best, and I think it needs all of us to come together. So I hope we now accept the fact that human activity has resulted in a climate crisis and the unacceptable consequences if we do not act as organizations now and as individuals as well. So, it's all of government, whole of society that needs to come together to address the current climate crisis. Let me move on, next slide, please, to, the pressure on businesses. How are you going to be faced with this climate crisis? So businesses are going to be under pressure from investors, from regulators, from consumers, and to add to all of this, there's carbon tax and litigation. I won't be able to cover litigation, in this short span of time, but I will cover investors, regulators, consumers, etc. The next slide, please. So this is the pressure from investors in Malaysia, and I've also put one example internationally. So EPF have stated, very clearly that all their investments will be based on ESG practices by 2030. And they also have indicated that they will phase out coal investments. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, has been writing to CEOs of companies and also Malaysian companies, asking them to shift to be more green. The Institutional Investors Council in Malaysia is also doing the same. And if you've been following the news, you would have noted that activist shareholders like Engine Number One have removed independent directors at ExxonMobil, and they've appointed climate-minded board members. So this is what board members are now facing. Climate accountability is now something that we all need to worry about as board directors. Next slide, please. Our regulators, Bursa, have also made sustainability reporting mandatory since 2015. And this was amended in 2018 to include a recommendation for listed companies to follow TCFD guidance in their reporting. And I think Bursa, Securities Commission, and Bank Negara, they're all talking, I think, very seriously about how TCFD has to be mandatory as well. Of course, those of you who have listed companies in Singapore know that next year you have to have its mandatory TCFD reporting. Next slide, please. So to add on to all this pressure from investors and all that, there's also consumer pressure. And this slide here shows you Unilever, and Unilever is going to start having their carbon footprint on their packaging. So, and I think they're rolling out by the end of this year. And once Unilever starts, other companies will also follow suit. Okay, and all this is because, you know, it's happening because of, definitely because of consumer pressure. Next slide, please. So some countries are also introducing a carbon tax, and this is usually applicable to companies who are major emitters of greenhouse gases. Like Singapore, it's $5 per ton of CO2 equivalent. To date, there are 27 countries that have introduced a carbon tax, and they include some of our major trading partners, like I said, Singapore and the European Union. These taxes, of course, vary from country to country. And in order not to put domestic companies at a disadvantage in respect of taxes, some countries like the EU have proposed to adopt CBAM. CBAM stands for Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, otherwise commonly referred to as carbon border tax. So if you're exporting to the EU, then you need to worry about carbon tax as well. Next slide, please. So the question is, what should plastic manufacturers do? Next slide, please. I don't really have the time to go into details. You can contact me later, or even, you know, contact CGM. But basically, you know, you need to get to net zero as soon as possible by reducing, substituting, and sequestering. So reducing your GHG emissions for a industry like yours, you can, you know, tweak your operational efficiency. Substitution, I think the low-hanging fruit in Malaysia is definitely solar. And sequestration is by, of course, planting trees, because trees are carbon sink. Next slide, please. In this slide, I'm citing a good example of a local company. This is IOI, they have started their journey. And again, a very busy slide, but if you look at the graph at the bottom, you can see that in the plantation sector, IOI has a target of reducing their emissions in 2025 by 61% compared to their baseline levels in 2015. So this is a very good example of a local company. There are, of course, other companies that have also started their journey, so kudos to them. And we hope that the plastic industry will also start sooner than later. Next slide, please. So this is a cartoon about how some companies are greenwashing. So this gentleman says, "Thank goodness for carbon trading." And his colleague is asking, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, it lets us buy our way out of having to be environmentally responsible. So please do not go down this path. Make sure you reduce your emissions before you decide to carbon offset." So my last few minutes I will spend on the governance principles. And the next slide, please. So the World Economic Forum launched the initiative on climate change targeting directors of boards from the perspective of governance. So boards provide the oversight and drive companies to adopt best practices. So there are 8 governing principles as shown in this slide here, and they include climate accountability is principle 1. Then we have command of the subject is principle 2. Principle 3 is board structure. Principle 4 is materiality assessment. Principle 5 is strategic integration. Principle 6 is incentivization or executive compensation. Principle 7 is reporting and disclosure. And principle 8 is exchange. I'll discuss very quickly a few of these principles to illustrate how governance works and cite some examples. So Climate accountability, principle 1. So boards should be accountable for the company's long-term resilience with respect to potential shifts in the business landscape that may result from climate change. Failure to do so may constitute a breach of directors' duties. Shareholders are now making directors personally accountable for climate accountability, similar to fiduciary responsibilities. When we all had to attend the mandatory accreditation program, we were warned about, how, we are liable, our fiduciary liability, but now it's all about climate accountability. So directors are under a lot of pressure, and we can no longer say we did not know. Next, the second principle is the command of the subject. Board directors must have an understanding of the effects of climate change for their business. Directors don't have to have a PhD in climate, just be knowledgeable, or at least bring in an independent director who has some climate experience. The principle 3 is board structure. As the board drives the direction for the company, it is imperative that climate matters be discussed as a board agenda. Now, this can be done as a dedicated board sustainability committee, or in my previous board, we addressed it at the board governance and risk management committee. Principle 6 is incentivization or executive compensation. The KPI of the CEO and C-suite should include climate and ESG criteria. This would encourage management to take a more aggressive approach to climate change. Some companies also found that management became more innovative when incentives are involved. Principle 7 is reporting and disclosure. Companies should take the initiative to include climate change reporting in the annual report. And I think you've got to be really transparent, no greenwashing. And the final principle 8 is exchange. We agree that the board can have very meaningful conversations with their management, but it is best to engage with external parties like NGOs, academicians, and scientists to get the latest data and science on climate change to be better informed. So next slide, please. I think that's my final slide. We only have this planet. There's no planet B. So let's leave this planet in a better place for our future generations. And the next slide is my take-home message. So I hope I've convinced you that climate crisis is real. You have to measure your emissions and get to net zero as soon as possible. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Kalaniti. You not only convince us, I think you have also put pressure on us now, which is good, which is what this whole webinar is all about. Yeah, a little bit of pressure keeps us going. So
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for the detailed explanation of the current situation, which is already crucial, and bringing us this sense of urgency, yeah, for us to act. So with this, that's all from all our experts. And right now, back to Crystal to do a poll.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Wee. Thank you to all speakers for the amazing presentations. I believe all of us here have learned a lot from all the 4 papers. So at this point of time, before we start the Q&A session, we would like to invite all the participants to please take part in the quick poll. Only 8 questions. These 8 questions will gauge some of your feedback in order for us to improve our future webinar sessions. So please don't be shy. Just a very quick click and submit kind of poll. Please participate so that MPMA could continue to provide good content for you.
Do this quickly, please. We have lots of questions to answer.
Yes.
And it's difficult for us to get all these experts in one place for us to clarify the burning questions that we want to ask.
So, Ms. Wei, just to interrupt here. Now, good afternoon, everyone. While we're waiting for the poll to be completed, on behalf of MPMA, I would like to also thank very sincerely the speakers who have come to join us today on the very important subject of sustainability. Climate change from Dr. Kalaniti is very real, that's for sure. I'm a keen gardener. I can tell you that the weather change has really created a lot of havoc for my plants that I've been planting in the house. It's not something we can avoid, it's something that we have to really solve. Okay, so again, on behalf of MPMA, many thanks to all the speakers. We have a lot of questions later on. I will also add on some of the comments that I'd like to share insofar as the subject is concerned. So over to you, this Crystal again.
Thank you, Dato' Lim. We're just gonna stay on for another 15 seconds, 30 seconds. Please
How
finish
many
up your
have you
poll.
got?
We have about 55% answered the poll already.
Oh, let's aim for 50%. Ladies and gentlemen, we put in a lot of efforts to organize this, thousands and thousands of hours. So please give us some feedback.
I think the most important thing is that feedback allows us to know where our areas of weaknesses, where the areas that we can further try to improve. At the end of the day, it's all for our participants. So we hope to get your feedback so that we know where we are lacking. That's very important.
Yep. We are hitting at about 60% mark. I think we can end here. Thank you very much for participating in the poll. We value your feedback and we hope to provide you with better webinar sessions in our upcoming conferences. So right now, I will pass the session back to Ms. Wee to start the Q&A session. Ms. Wee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Crystal. So the first question we have here for Mr. Arnold Wang. Mr. Arnold, are there any solutions for paper packaging so that it can be used to replace flexible packaging?
Thank you. I think it's a very broad question for me to answer. For flexible packaging, especially for small format or single-use flexible packaging, I think the first choice, actually, first option for us or for the brand owners to design their packaging is to move away from single-use to reuse or directly eliminate small format flexible packaging. So because substitution from sorry, it seems there is some sound.
I think Dato' Jana, can you mute, please? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Arnold.
Okay, so in general, paper and compostable flexibles also face many of the same challenges as plastic formats because you need considerable virgin content, and the current designs are not fit for circulation, and as a matter of fact, I mean, paper's recycling rate is much higher than plastics. We have to admit. But if key questions and challenges for paper can be tackled, I mean, at least we shouldn't use a paper from ancient forests or endangered species, right? So if some questions like that can be answered, substitution from plastic to paper could bring benefits in certain applications, such as high leakage items in high leaking geographics. So you have to put the substitution question into your real scenario. So where do you want to replace it with paper? Do you have the right collection and the recycling facility there for plastics or for paper? If you, I mean, the infrastructure there can collect all the plastic packaging you put there, why you change it to maybe paper laminated with plastics in the first place, right? So there are lots of questions which need to be answered before you make a decision. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Arnold Wang. It's not a simple answer of yes or no to that question, because there's many things that you need to consider. Like you said, going from single-use plastics to a single-use paper, that may not solve the problem, because if the problem is a littering problem, right? So, and then there are also other paper, the quality of paper, the types of paper that we use. Yeah, so yeah, we should look at alternatives in totality instead of just moving from plastic to paper, as in the popular belief that it will solve everything. Yeah, thank you very much.
Ms. Wei, I would just like to add one comment here.
Yes, Dr. Lim.
Arnold, I think your point here is very interesting in the sense that you are saying that we should have a switch, where possible, of course, from plastics to paper. But there is a bit of a disconnect when we have the two subjects that have been discussed today, which is on plastics versus plastics in terms of environmental impact versus a subject that Dr. Kalaniti has brought up, which is climate change. It's very interesting because, again, we don't have enough time to go through everything, but the key point here I'm trying to say is that if you look at the carbon footprint of paper versus plastics, the carbon footprint of paper is much, much higher than that of plastics, simply because you need a much thicker paper in terms of weight and thickness to make, to transport, and to dispose. And each cycle has a carbon footprint versus plastics, because plastics has the inherent property of lighter yet stronger. Before I continue, I just want to emphasize one very important thing is that I am a retiree. I left the plastic industry in 2013. I don't have any vested financial interest, so I'm not promoting any product or defending any product. So that's very important. So I think here the point that we are trying to say is that in any alternatives, one has to look at it not only from the problem of mismanaged plastics, but also the subject of carbon footprint, for instance, like what I've just mentioned, because paper is inherently much more heavier in weight. So the energy used to make the paper, the energy used to transport something which is light, which is heavier and larger in size, and also the energy that is used to eventually dispose of it or even recycle it is always a climate issue. Okay, and the other thing that we sometimes forget is that anything that is organic has got two very important things in it. That's carbon and hydrogen. That's why oil is known as hydrocarbons. Now, anytime there is a decomposition of an organic product, you would get a combination of H2O, which is water, that's fine, but the carbon will combine with oxygen to give CO2, which is climate change. And if you have paper that is in the landfill without the presence of oxygen, and you have this anaerobic decomposition taking place, you would get methane, which is 23 times more harmful than carbon dioxide in climate change. So you will have a disconnect there. So I think that is probably a big subject that we have insufficient time to discuss, but I just want to address the issue that when we talk about a very simple thing of substitution, we have to look beyond just looking at a pure substitution. We have to see the replacement impact both from all angles, including climate change, which is, of course, very, very real and very, very important. So over to you, Ms. Wee, again.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. Thank you. Thank you for the input. Should we go on the second question? This question is for Datuk Jana. Datuk Jana, what infrastructure would the government need to build to ensure that 70% of plastics is collected by 2030? Can you give some views? Can you give some input on this?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question from, I think from Eddie Fong. Thank you very much. But basically here in this context, it's not infrastructure per se. It's not like the mega infra that we are looking at. Of course, the effort from the governmental infrastructure will be on, but again, it's not mega infrastructure that we are talking about. It's more of a curbside collections and reverse vending machine, drop-off centers, and community collection centers that we are looking at. And of course, with these facilities, it does not necessarily to be built by the government, but it can or rather should be provided by the industry under the bigger context of EPR. I mean, that's the thinking that we have for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Dato' Jana. So we'll go to the third question. The third question will also be from Mr. Eddie Fong to Dato' Jana again, if you don't mind, Dato' Jana. Would
Sure.
CASA be working closely with other ministries, for example, Ministry of Local Housing, or act unilaterally to ensure the 70% target is reached?
Okay, to answer this question, of course, we have been working very closely with other agencies. And now the engagement with other agencies has been, so far has been good, at least to date now, it has shown some positive results. For example, under the plastic the management index, Malaysia has been ranked as the first in stakeholders engagement component. So, which has been just published in the year 2021. I mean, just currently it has been published. So in fact, it shows again that what we have done or worked together with the stakeholders' needs, all has been good. And in fact, it will be further enhanced in the year to come. Going forward, we will develop the synergy, right? Not only with the government agencies. I'm sure Mr. Eddie has brought up about KPKT, Ministry of Housing and Local Government, but also with other stakeholders to increase the synergy with the relevant parties. But we ensure you that we will be also working with the NGOs and other relevant parties, including MPMA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dato'. From Xia Yi Yang of Monash University. From your perspective, Dato', what are the key factors to catalyze successful plastic circular economy in Malaysia? What can the consumers contribute to the part of the 3R: reuse, recycle, and reduce?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Shah, for the question. I think most importantly, or the key enabler in catalyzing circular economy at the current moment is definitely going to be EPR. But of course, from the upstream right up to downstream, there are a lot of processes that we go through. Of course, in the upstream, we look at the innovations that I think we have, a lot of speakers have spoken about it. That should be a way out for this. The second one will be also to ensure sustainability of the plastic products, distribution of plastic products. That I think we have to work on that. And of course, the EPR comes in between, and ability to collect and dispose all the waste. And if EPR is done holistically, it can and will be able to promote better 3R, as well as sourcing at source and separating at source. And the last one will be to commit to diagnose plastic efficiency to the recycle. That I think we'll be looking at, meaning we have to look into the whole process from the upstream right up to the downstream. That's why we are looking at on this. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dato' Jana. And from Dr. Kala said that we are yet to start recycling at our homes, because we just have one bin for all our waste. So I guess we need to fix this urgently, Dato'.
I totally agree with
In fact, I think all of us will be able to evaluate and answer that. Of course, a big yes to her. And now we have a very clear way. Of course, this again goes under a different ministry, but the government is looking at on a bigger picture how to handle this. And again, it will be a contribution from the individuals themselves. I think we have to contribute to our own environment. I think we have to start by practicing it at our home, but government should or will be encouraging it in the future. But
Yeah, yeah, Dato' Jana, sorry, this is a
Yes.
really sore point with me because, as you know, I left Malaysia for Brussels for 5 years. I come back and I'm still, stuck with one bin, whereas in Europe, they're so strict. You can't even mix your organic waste. Dato' Lim, just like you, I'm also a gardener. I've got vegetables growing, so my organic waste is all composted. But I get very annoyed when I have to put my plastic and my bottles and my cans all into one bin. And all they need to do is give us 3 bins, one for plastic, one for paper, one for, the recyclable. So it's as simple as that. But, we've come all this way and recycling in Malaysia is still at its infancy, So how are we going to get the man on the street to recycle when we can't even recycle at source?
Right.
Dr. Kala, just to add on, sorry, Dr. Kala, just to add on, just like I spent a few months every year in the US. That's the reason why I decided to quit the industry many years ago because of my family being there. And I spent a lot of time in the US. And I do recycling both in Malaysia and in the US. And I'm very sad to say that when it comes to recycling here, everything is dumped into one bag, and you do not know what happens to it at the end of the day. So certainly, I think the key is to focus on the circular economy with recycling in mind, rather than the material itself, because all material, each of them has its own functional and useful purpose. It's the problem really starts when it is littered. Then it becomes a problem. So I think that's the focus. And the key to me is that if we can increase the recycling in terms of the infrastructure as well as awareness and so on, it's going to make a big change.
Agree.
Yes,
Dr. Jana, please.
Yeah, definitely. I hear, if I allow everybody to speak, that I think everybody will be giving us the same opinion. I'm with you, Dr. Kala. I'm with you, Dato' Lim. I'm hearing you. Definitely give it a bit of no. I mean, that's not a good excuse, but give me some time to just push it through to our management and see whether this can be done. Because we ourselves are separated into 3 other ministries. One looking, we have to speak to KPKT. I mean, the country is in that nature, but give us some room to speak, and we'll try to push it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you so much, Dr. Jana. Really, that really helps, because if we need to return and we need to collect back, the first thing that has to happen is the coming back, the last mile, the coming back from the consumer, post-consumer. Thank you so much, Dato'. Okay, we should proceed quickly to Mr. Anu Wang again from Yap Chia Wen of Stanta Plastics. While rigid packaging has made significant headways into post-consumer content usage, why has flexible packaging been lagging behind, especially in availability of post-consumer recycled raw material? Maybe you can share a little bit from your time with China Reuse and Recycling Association. What happened to the post-consumer waste for flexible packaging? I have a personal interest in this too. Please, Mr. Wang.
I think the situation is similar to every developing countries. So flexible packaging has a low recycling rate. And also, I think similar, I mean, not very the same situation, but in Europe, the regulation also restrict the recycled content to be used in food contact flexible packaging. So it does that. I mean, it's the same everywhere. I mean, but for flexible packaging, I think to solve our current challenges, the first option is to move away from small format or flexible packaging in the first place. So that's the first thing we need to do, not actually to focus on recycled content. Of course, recycled content, maybe what we talk a lot about chemical recycling, pyrolysis to provide food contact virgin-like material for flexible packaging in the future, but it's not gonna solve or fulfill our commitment by 2025. Probably we could see some result by 2030, maybe, yeah. But as I said earlier, so we need to do something now. So the first choice is to apply reuse and to move away from flexible packaging, from some small format packaging, which are unrecyclable everywhere. Even worse in developing countries. Even worse I don't think China actually recycle flexible packaging, especially from consumers. Maybe we recycle some industrial flexible packaging, but not consumer products, flexible packaging.
Dr. Anna, I'd just like to add on a few points here. One has to go back to history and look at how packaging was made in the past. We used to have a lot of things that were packed in metal cans, in glass bottles, and so on. Then over the years, packaging moved away from that, principally because of a few things. Cost is one thing, but of course, carbon footprint was much higher then, to flexible packaging, which has a much lower carbon footprint, but it has a problem of recycling. Now, if the last few days we have had very interesting discussions, which I thought I would just bring to the attention of the other speakers today, which is that we had two sessions, 2 days, where speakers were talking about developments, latest development in flexible packaging. Now, one of the big problems of packaging is to preserve and to enhance the shelf life of the packed food, especially for food. So the problem that we face is that if you put food into a metal can or you put food into a glass bottle, it will stay fresh for a long time, simply because oxygen cannot go through and cause the food to spoil. But when you go to plastics, there is this problem of migration. There's this problem of what you call barrier properties that affects the quality of the food over a period of time, because oxygen, gas can go through certain type of plastic. So in that sense, what they do is that they laminate various materials like aluminum foil, aluminum coating, or these different type of plastics that will enhance the shelf life of the food, packed food, but it makes it impossible to recycle. So in the past, there has been a lot of problems of recycling what we call multiple substrate, multiple material packaging. The last 2 days, last two sessions we have had, there has been a lot of development by both the upstream resin producers and machine suppliers and the converters to make this material into what is known as a mono-material configuration. That would allow recycling. So it is hoped that the industry has put in all these efforts, because the problem is real. The problem is real, there's no doubt about that. So while we are trying to preserve the climate change impact of lighter yet stronger, which is one part of the equation, we still have to consider the fact that it is important for us to also, from the industry point of view, understand that plastics is a problem if it is a mismanaged plastics. And mismanaged plastics will be a problem because there is no value to the product, simply because it cannot be recycled. So if this can be converted to be something that can be recycled, it will create value. The recreation of value will increase the potential of recyclability. So it's just to give some perspective of what has happened over the last few sessions.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Lim. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Jana, there is another question for you from Dr. Sri. What is the government's plan in accelerating circular economy or sustainability for the small and medium industry? because we can see more and more multinationals are actively participating in sustainability, but the Malaysian industries comprising more than 70% of small and medium-sized companies, whereby majority of them are lack of awareness and action plan towards circular economy, sustainability, or climate change. What is our government's plan, if you can share? Datuk Jana.
Sorry, madam, I
Yes,
missed you.
sorry.
Sorry, I missed you. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, can
You want me
repeat
to repeat the question again, please?
Yeah, please, please.
Okay, Dr. Jana, what is the government's plan to help the small, medium industry in Malaysia to adopt circular economy and to be sustainable, to also adopt this climate change concept?
Sure.
What are some of the government's plan to help the small and medium companies?
For clear, for now we have setting or we are organizing some trainings. We're going to do a lot of series of trainings for the SMEs, and number two is going to be kind of awards for some of the SMEs who's adopting this circular economy. These two things is going to be done in the next quarter. Yeah, for now. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. Thank you, Dr. Jana.
Thank you.
All right. I think we are almost at the end of the session. We are right on time. I do not want to keep everyone here. So let me, okay. So on behalf of the organizing committee of MPMA Plastic Month, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to Datuk Jana Santiran, Mr. Arno Wang, Dr. Cheong Meng Soon, and Dr. Kalaniti Nesaratnam, who have spared their precious time to enrich us with knowledge, views, and expert advice on the subject of circular economy and climate change. I'm sure everyone would agree that we have had a very engaging session, and I'm sure everyone have gained something new from each of our distinguished speakers. Woody Allen's famous quote, 80% of success is showing up. So to all the participants, thank you so much for your active participation today. We strongly urge members to participate in the MPMA UTM collaboration with Dr. Cheong, be proactive in managing our carbon emissions to combat climate change. Kindly be informed that our next webinar is on 30th of November next week, and we will continue this discussion on plastic circularity, specifically on plastics recycling technology. So this is the enabler for us to move forward. So we hope that all of you will join us again. And Dr. Jana, please, if you can, take some time to be with us next Tuesday afternoon at the same time. Last but not least, thank you again to all our generous sponsors for your unwavering support towards MPMA for the benefit of the whole plastic industries in Malaysia. Thank you and stay safe. So I'll pass this session, the floor back to Crystal again.
Thank you, Ms. Wee. I would not like to hold all the speakers any longer, but can we just switch on our webcam to take a quick group photo? The Secretariat, please kindly do so as well. Okay, let me count down, yeah. Okay, 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Got it? Secretariat team got it, huh? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. So see you next week, where we will continue the discussion on plastic sustainability. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Kala.
Hi, Ms. Wee.
Thank you, Dr. Cheong.
Thank you, Ms. Wee.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Stay in touch. We shall contact you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato' Jana.
Thank you, Miss Wee. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, everyone. You guys are the best, getting control of everything. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now I can go and
Relax.
okay. All right. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.